When we talk about pre-intelligence regarding the September 11th attacks, we always talk about the CIA, the NSA, the FBI. And this is where actionable intelligence comes from. Now, what about the State Department under Bill Clinton or George Bush? Was there enough actionable intelligence to have a heightened sense of awareness in the months leading up to the attacks? I would argue that there was plenty of pre-actionable intelligence going as far back as 1996. After the Bojinka Plot plotters were caught, Abdul Hakim Murad was the first, and Ramzi Youssef shortly thereafter. It was Murad's intelligence to Philippines police regarding a much larger scale attack we're calling the Bojinka Plot, in which there was three phases. And one of the phases was to hijack a commercial airliner and crash it to CIA Langley. This is one of the very first instances of where we get to hear that there are foreign agents or foreign assets, terrorist assets, wanting to hijack a plane and crash it into a U.S. high-valued area. So now, what does this type of intelligence do in regards to acting on it? Because according to one of the lead investigators, Rodolfo Mendoza, who himself has interrogated Abdul Hakim Murad, he claims back in 1996 that he gave the briefings on Murad to the FBI. What did they do with this intelligence? According to Rodolfo Mendoza, nothing. And so we have many instances regarding intelligence from CIA base stations or from the FBI regarding about a want for these Arab terrorist cells wanting to use planes as the weapon to crash into American cities or sensitive areas. And everybody knows about the August 6th PDB briefing, which was given to George Bush at his ranch in Texas. But not many people know about the December 4th, 1998 memo. This was entitled Bin Laden Preparing to Hijack U.S. Aircraft and Other Attacks, in which I will quote from the report. Quote, reporting blank suggests bin Laden and his allies are preparing for attacks in the United States, including an aircraft hijacking to obtain the release of Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, Ramzi Youssef, and Mohammed Sadiq Awad. One source quoted a senior member of the Gamma Islamiyah, which is an Egyptian terrorist cell, saying that as of late October, the Gamma Islamiyah had completed planning for an operation in the U.S. on behalf of bin Laden, but that the operation was on hold. A senior bin Laden operative from Saudi Arabia was to visit Gamma Islamiyah counterparts in the United States soon thereafter to discuss options, perhaps including an aircraft hijacking. IG leader Islambouli in late September was planning to hijack a U.S. airliner during the next couple of weeks to free Omar Abdul Rahman and the other prisoners, according to what may be a different source. The same source late last month said that bin Laden might implement plans to hijack U.S. aircraft before the beginning of Ramadan on December 20th, and that the two members of the operational team had evaded security checks during a recent trial run at an unidentified New York airport, which is redacted. 2. Some members of the bin Laden network had received hijack training, according to various sources, but no group directly tied to bin Laden's al-Qaeda organization has ever carried out an aircraft hijacking. Bin Laden could be weighing other types of operations against the United States aircraft. According to Blank, the IG in October, the Gamma Islamiyah, obtained SA-7 missiles and intended to move them from Yemen into Saudi Arabia to shoot down an Egyptian plane or, if unsuccessful, a U.S. military or civilian aircraft. 3. Blank indicates the bin Laden organization or its allies are moving closer to implementing anti-U.S. attacks at unspecified locations, but we do not know whether they are related to attacks on aircraft. A bin Laden associate in Sudan late last month told a colleague in Kandahar, Afghanistan, that he had shipped a group of containers to Afghanistan. Bin Laden associates also talked about the movement of containers to Afghanistan before the East Africa bombings. So here we have another actionable intelligence report from the CIA to the State Department. What kind of security measures were implemented in late 98? None. According to multiple managers of airline companies such as United Airlines, American Airlines, these were the two airlines that were hijacked on September 11th, incidentally. No actionable intelligence, even with security companies guarding these airlines, such as Argenbright Security, a major company for the Northeast, took no precautions. In fact, their hiring practices were rather dubious, which is the reason why certain 9/11 skeptics, such as myself and Nelson Martins, believe that these security companies who hired a large amount of Arabs were compromised by al-Qaeda assets to hide weapons inside these planes. And after 9/11 attacks, we saw certain instances of maybe a gun on Flight 11 and 77, as reported earlier by American Airlines and redacted and then corrected, and also log knives that were found at the Shanksville site. But there were other reports. Let's just stick with the Bush administration. In May of 2001, the CIA actually informs the White House that a group presently inside the United States was in the process of planning a terrorist attack. Now, the CIA wasn't the only agency that was warning the State Department about this. There was another operation called Able Danger, but they were a covert operation headed by the Defense Intelligence Agency, and they weren't sharing their information even with the CIA, or the State Department for that matter. But they managed to find two cells inside the United States, one headed by, Omar Abdel Rahman, which he was found guilty of participating in the Landmarks plot, and of course Mohammed Atta, in which the Hamburg cell led by him and Marwan al-Shehhi and Ziad Jarrah. On June 29, 2001, the Presidential Daily Brief stated that the U.S. is not the target of a disinformation campaign by bin Laden, and that this document surrounding the threat included an interview that month with a Middle Eastern journalist in which bin Laden aides warned of an incoming attack. This information was shared with Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor under George Bush. And on July 10th, the CIA's counterterrorism chief, Cofer Black, along with Richard Blee, who is the Alex Station or the bin Laden Issue Station deputy chief, who met with Condoleezza Rice and the National Security Advisor under Bush to inform her about communication intercepts and other top secret intelligence showing that the increasing likelihood that an al-Qaeda attack would soon visit the United States. However, the intelligence that the counterterrorism and Alex Station gave to Condoleezza Rice and Richard Clark, who's the National Security Council czar, was very vague. And not to mention that they were withholding information regarding the CIA monitoring Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in Malaysia, in Yemen, and then supposedly they lost them inside the United States, but they never told them that they were inside the United States either. Why? Who knows? August 6, 2001, the infamous presidential daily brief. Bin Laden determined to strike inside the United States. This was actually given to Condoleezza Rice. So we have 4 instances just within 4 months prior to the September 11th attacks, including numerous warnings coming from Saudi Arabia, Germany, Spain, Israel. The warnings, presidentially, were vague because they didn't know the nature of the attacks. They only knew that there was something brewing from their assets or their operatives in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, that were feeding them information that, yes, there is an incoming attack. So that means that a lot of people were talking about this attack upcoming, but they didn't know the specifics of the attacks. So we have at our disposal, at the very least, some level of operation, a large-scale operation that was happening inside the United States. Now, we have agencies like the CIA, headed by the Alex Station, headed by Richard Blee, and Michelle Ann Casey, who was in charge of the ticket regarding the Ahmed al-Hada Yemen hub, which is the al-Qaeda operations center, where the CIA and the NSA have been monitoring the house and listening into phone calls. The NSA were the only ones listening to incoming and receiving. The CIA can only listen to voices inside the house and not phone calls incoming. So we have this sensitive data that is not being shared with the FBI, who are the only agency who can monitor these agents inside the United States and probably keep a close eye on them, but they were not even told that much. Regarding foreign intelligence, such as Israel or Saudi Arabia, according to the Israeli Mossad, they gave the CIA a list of names. Yes, they did. However, the list of names that they gave them, the CIA was already monitoring these people. And if the Mossad really wanted to, they could have shared that information with the FBI, because the CIA is not allowed to conduct operations inside the United States, and the FBI is the only agency with federal jurisdiction, not the CIA. Whether the Mossad knew this or not, I would be remiss to tell you that a high-level foreign intelligence agency like the Mossad would know the difference regarding which agency can act on intelligence inside the United States. But they're not the only ones to blame. There are multiple countries to blame regarding actionable intelligence that's not shared within the United States. And also all these warnings to the State Department, and the State Department did nothing until the attacks took place, and then it was too late. Regarding heightened awareness inside the security apparatuses of these airports, none was taken. The Federal Aviation Association, the FAA, did nothing to warn companies like Argenbright to take precautionary measures, to be stricter about their watchful eye regarding who's coming into the United States. Regarding the agencies inside the United States that are monitoring terrorist cells, like the FBI, like the New York Joint Terrorism Task Force, who are trying to tell their superiors that something brewing is beginning inside the United States. Regarding the Zacarias Moussaoui case in Minnesota, where you have agents working on his case who have already arrested him regarding his suspicious nature regarding wanting to fly a plane and not land it, not wanting to learn how to land it, and trying to access his laptop, and they were refused. You have agents inside New York who for years have been trying to capture even Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, people like Frank Pellegrino, Not many people know his name. He's so important because he's the only New York agent back in the early 90s who knew anything about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed regarding the Bojinka Plot, who was an uncle to Ramzi Youssef, who was the suspect, the primary suspect in the World Trade Center bombing of 1993. And so we have these agencies inside the United States that were acting on good faith, but weren't allowed to go further with it. Even with the 1993 World Trade Center bombings, we had some level of warnings regarding sensitive areas of New York where they could improve on their security. They did not. The World Trade Center security, headed by the Port Authority in 1993, was not ready for anything like Ramzi Youssef. But after that attack, you would think that the airlines, even after the Bojinka Plot was uncovered, that the airlines would take stricter measures regarding people coming through customs or going through security checks. Why would they allow knives in the first place, even if it's shorter than 4 fingers, right? Why would they allow such weapons like that? Or box cutters, which was actually allowed on planes. Why was not the information shared with the State Department regarding Bojinka? If it was shared, why didn't the State Department know what to do to take precautionary measures about wanting to heighten security in just the airline industry? According to Condoleezza Rice, I think she committed perjury with the 9/11 Commission, in which they asked her about why didn't the State Department do what was needed to do in the months regarding the attacks about security in the nation. And according to Condoleezza Rice, I'll quote you, quote, "We had no idea that they would use planes as weapons," end quote. Well, that's not true. I just read to you certain reports regarding actual intelligence from the CIA, from the FBI, from foreign intelligence about Al-Qaeda and other foreign elements wanting to use planes as weapons. If you want to go back further, 1996, Bojinka Plot, which was shared with the FBI, unless the FBI didn't share it with the State Department. So, which I find unlikely. So here you have, at the very least, 2 years prior, 3 years prior to the attacks, at the very least, daily briefs from the Central Intelligence Agency to the State Department about planes to be used as weapons, to be used to crash into high-valued, sensitive areas of the United States. And the World Trade Center has always been a primary target. They're the 2 biggest buildings inside the United States at the time, and they have been under a constant terrorist threat going back even before 93. And so, why didn't the State Department act on the intelligence provided to them, even though it was vague, in which they could have at least warned the security companies of these airline industries or the FAA, in which they could have related to the security companies of these industries regarding a heightened sense of awareness and stricter measures on what could be allowed on these planes. And when it comes to the attacks of September 11, 2001, there is plenty of blame to go around. And we should have held, at least the congressional inquiries should have held at least the State Department under the gun, so to speak, in regards to their dismissive and indifferent nature regarding the intelligence reports, which were plenty.